Hello, everybody. I'm Roadblock, and this is a Raid Shadow Legends video. And I'm not alone today. We are joined here by Colred. How are you doing, Colred?
I'm doing great. We just did a video on my channel. We had a lot of fun talking about stuff. I'm excited to come onto your channel and talk some free to play.
Absolutely. So, for those of you that don't know and haven't seen it yet, Colred and I are both taking part in the free-to-play challenge that's Hell Hades is putting on right now. Shout out to him for this awesome event that I know we both love. We are
Absolutely.
technically on separate teams, but you know we're all friends here, so we're gonna just talk general free-to-play. And I figured we'd get it started with none other than who'd you pick as your starter champion, Colred?
Oh, good question. I actually chose Athel. I know that you chose Kale. I think Kale is the traditional choice. That's the one that most people go with. I just have a soft spot for Athel in my heart. I love the fact that she has a 100% AoE. I'm sorry, 100% weaken on her A1. That is just bonkers. And it's each hit has a 100% chance. So even though she's affinity and she can weak hit, she's not going to weak hit 3 times in a row. So you get this really consistent A1 weaken. I love the triple hit for Fire Knight. And I just think she's also a really cool looking champion. And I don't really like Kale's aesthetic. So I
Okay.
lean in that direction. And then on top of everything, it used to be that you could get Deacon Armstrong with your free promo code. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But Athel and Deacon were such a lethal combo, especially for early game faction crypts. So
Yep.
that's where I fell in love with her. And now I'm just sticking to her because she's my favorite.
I tried her last year for the first
Hmm.
time. For me, it's not her kit as much as her AI
Her
that
AI is wonky.
that
Yeah.
that frustrated me quite a bit. And we kind of talked about this on your channel a little bit that I got demoralized in the last challenge. Part of that was because of so I say Athel because but
Sure.
part of that was because of her animations, her AI, like you talked about aesthetics being a thing. It doesn't scratch that itch for me when I was using her in the last challenge. So I did go with Kale, like you said, and that's more of like a personal preference than anything else. I do think that weekend, I thought last year the same thing. Decreased defense on Rathalos A1, weaken on her A1. Boom, I've got what I need for progression, right? For bosses, and it just never satisfied, that itch. So,
I
um,
do think every starter champion has their own play style. You have to build them a little bit differently. You have to focus on slightly different things. And I will say I've used all of the starter champions at this point, and the first time I used any of them was not great. You know what I mean? Like you learn to use them over time, and she suits my play style very well.
yep.
And as a result, I think I probably like she's probably my most effective starter. Whereas for you, let's say it would be Kale, and I think that's great that all four starter champions are viable options for players, and
Mhm.
it is a bit of a personal choice. Gaelic is the weakest of the four, but even he can do a really good job. And I think for this particular challenge, he's a pretty good pick because we all got um, to Gore for
Yep.
free from our download link, and then that duo in Faction Crypts is going to be absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, I did consider that too. I think for me personally, I like the because his whole thing is the decreased defense, right? That he has in his kit, right? And we getting Ugo, I kind of was like, well, but what's interesting enough is I actually pulled him already. So I
Oh, you
do
did.
have, yep, and I'm saving him. I'm not going to feed him. I'm going to save him for Faction Wars because that was a mistake I made last year. I didn't know how important Faction Wars was.
Yeah.
The whole meta for gear completely shifted last year, in my opinion. People all of a sudden were saying, don't do dungeons, it's Faction Wars and Doom Tower. And so,
Right.
I was not prepared for that. So, but how have things been going on your account? Have you like what champions have you pulled? Have you pulled any shards at all? Like what's going on there?
Yeah, so my viewers know this, but I'm approaching this year's challenge a little bit differently than I did last year. Last year I was really trying to win the whole thing. That was my goal, and I was pulling out all the stops in order to do that and playing a lot of hours. But I have a 9-month-old son now, and so he's really my focus this year, and I just don't have the same number of hours, free hours to put into another account. So I've pulled back a little bit, and I'm trying to play as free to play as I can in like the mentality, just be as resource efficient as possible and play this account like it's going to be a lifelong account because my goal is to hand this off to somebody after 90 days. So I
Hmm.
want to give them an account in a really healthy place. My points in the challenge will just come or they won't. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not so worried about it. And as a result, I've pulled no shards. I'm
Yeah.
saving all of my shards for the first fusion. I'll probably pull void shards during the first 2 times void event. And we'll just look for opportunities to get as many resources as we can onto the account. I don't have a 6-star champion yet. My Athel is 50. I pulled Wukong as my promo code, so I have
I
him
was
as
about
a
to ask that.
50 as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, and so I don't think it's the optimal start for the challenge. I would not have pulled Wukong if I was trying to win the challenge. I would have gone in a different direction. But I think most new players will probably use the Wukong promo code because one, he's a legendary, and legendaries are just harder to get, and two, he's just freaking cool, right? He's just a
Yeah.
cool champion, and so I think he's going to have the biggest like curb appeal, if you will, of all of the promo codes. And so I just thought that would be a fun thing to be able to hand off to somebody after 90 days. But despite those things, I feel like the account's going well. You're at level 36. I think I'm at level 32. So I still feel like I'm keeping pace, but it's definitely slower. It's a slower pace than it was last year for me.
Yeah, no, and but I think that your approach is the correct one. Because I've had this same mentality. Now I have spent some ancients recently, and that's a lack of patience trying to get the 6 stars. I'm just getting food.
Yeah.
But and I pulled one void to complete a quest, the advanced
There's a
quest.
mission, yeah.
Yeah, well, no, one
Oh,
of the
right. It's an advanced quest, yeah.
yeah, to have one of every champion in arena and get a win.
Right.
So I was like, okay, and I got Justiciar, so I was like, okay, that's fine. Um, and now I have him already for other future missions too,
For
so
the
that's
fusion,
good.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but I am trying. I think saving shards is the approach. Last year, I YOLO'd all my shards. Like I was like, well, the best we can get is an epic anyways, so I don't need to wait till 2x. Not truly realizing, that the 2x's are also for epics, right? And I mean, we know
Yeah.
that, but I didn't know it. And so I was hurting myself in my opinion. I still think that you do have to approach this like a free to play player. I think you do need to save your shards for fusions because, I mean, yes, some people have pulled Yumiko's and Harimas with their first couple of shards. I could
Crazy.
go 3 months and not pull a legendary. Like that is
Yeah.
a true possibility for this challenge. And so making sure that you are able to do a fusion or who knows, maybe a champion chase tournament and steal one of those types of wins. Like I know that you did that I think last year, right?
I did actually. It was a champion training tournament, but
Champion
yes.
training. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I feel like those types of things can really shift the balance and help you catch up even though someone has a Harima. For example, just the first one that comes to my mind because I got him on a different account was Odin. I mean, that would be a big swing for an account like this if you were to pull something off like that. So
Sure.
I think that's the right approach. I think it's somewhere in the middle, right? There's the completely YOLO strategy, and then there's the reserved kind of saving, and I think the appropriate one is in the middle there. So, and then you said the other thing I wanted to touch on. You said that you went with Wukong. Can I ask if you were trying to be more competitive in it instead of long term, like you said? Who would you use for your promo code?
Yeah, I gave that some thought and then I didn't complete the analysis because I just decided on Wukong. But there were ones that I was considering. I know YST went with Allure. That was definitely one of the ones I was considering. She's incredibly powerful in boss fights. Anytime a turn meter can be reduced. She's also good against waves. She's got that AoE sleep and decreased defense. You don't have to book her. She's an epic that you can use all the way through to end game, basically without books. So she's going to help with Dark Fae. and some other,
Yeah.
boss fights, and obviously Fire Knight. She's going to be huge into Fire Knight. So I considered that. Stag Knight was a consideration a little bit, but with the Ugo free epic, then you don't really need the decreased defense. So the slow and the decreased attack are still really valuable. So I considered Stag Knight. Taragi the Frog, I think, is a clan boss focus, right? And he's a really good option. And he's going to synergize well, I think, with Ugo and Tagore, because you have so much support and so much tankiness from those three champions that potentially people who go Taragi the Frog are going to do very well in clan boss. So I think, those were amongst the champions I was considering. There were a few others. I don't remember off the top of my head all of them. But those were definitely three names that I would consider. But ultimately, like I said, I decided to go with Wukong.
Yeah, I went with Taragi. Clan boss is where I kind of again, personal preference. That's my favorite area.
Yeah.
One of my favorite areas of the game. And the way I look at it is, if you progress in clan boss, you get more shards and books, which gets you more champions, which gets you more progress, which gets you more And so I've always felt, and I've said this on a lot of the different free to play series that I've done, that clan boss, I think, is probably the most important focus, in my opinion. Now, I know that's shifted quite a bit to other areas of the game, but I have a pretty good spread, right? So I have somebody that can do Ogren Faction Wars a little bit. I have somebody that can do Shadowkin, somebody that can do orcs, and dark elves, of course. So I'm spread pretty good that I can get some of those early resources and help get some of that early perception gear as well. So
And I'm seeing that Hitatsu up there, who's going to pair really well with that Taragi the Frog in faction crypts. Those two guys are going to just power through those
yeah,
faction crypts for you once you build. And then you actually have a third epic from the Shadowkin factions. Chani is there as well. She's another ally protector, I believe, right? So
no,
is she not an ally protector? Who am I
no,
mistaking her for?
I don't know who you're mistaking her for off the top of my head, but
There's another ally protector. But okay, so you have a third one, and she looks like she's going to bring a little bit of damage, which is good. Now you got
Yep.
two tanks and a damage dealer. But so you're all set for Shadowkin faction crypts. Even just at 40, those champions are going to get you past the first boss, and that's awesome. You even have a rare down there at level 29. I forget that guy's name. Blood Masks. So yeah, your Shadowkin are looking really good.
He's
And I
probably going
do
to be
think,
food because I'm a little impatient,
yeah,
but
I don't know when the Shadowkin faction opens. So yeah, you might not wait for him to come around. But I do think we talked about clan boss. And I think that the focus has been from content creators, the message has been focus on clan boss, focus on clan boss, focus on clan boss. And I think we've passed the tipping point on that advice. I think my experience with takeovers over the last year has been that so many people are so stressed about their clan boss team that they are constantly trying to invest in champions that get them incremental progress in clan boss. And as a result, they become very inefficient in their accounts, and their accounts suffer in other places. It's not that clan boss shouldn't be a focus, it's that you shouldn't sacrifice everything to it, right? It has to be part of a well-rounded approach. And when you have an opportunity to massively improve your clan boss team, that should be the next 6-star or the next investment. But when you don't, when you can only make, I can go from a 10 million one key, like on brutal to like a 12 million one. Well, that doesn't help you any. Like, who cares? So don't worry about it so much. And instead, push Doom Tower or push Faction Wars or push your dungeons, or just go farm the event dungeon and get yourself a bunch of pinpoint gear, and that's going to help everybody. So in last year's challenge, I was not in like the top probably 30 or 40. Like I did not do very well in clan boss. I think I got to a 2-key nightmare, and that was it. Which sounds decent in 90 days time, but compared to some people who were doing 1-key ultra nightmares or 2-key ultra nightmares, I was like in the middle of the pack or in the second, in the bottom half. But I just progressed everywhere in the game. And so the account was in a very healthy place. And I do believe that with 1 or 2 champion pulls, I could probably have gotten up to that ultra nightmare. But you have to let that happen naturally as a free-to-play player. If you try to force it, you're going to end up hurting your account.
I completely agree. And I that happened to me last year. You know, we just talked about because I pulled him again this year, but last year one of my first epics I got was Hotatsu. Wasn't familiar with him. The leader of our team last year was Odd One. I was on his team,
Hmm.
and you know we did a collab, and he had kind of told me about Hotatsu and you know how to use him. He's pretty good in clan boss, right? You have increased defense, decreased attack, and a leech
The
built into
leech,
the kit,
yeah,
right? So it was a pretty good kit, but boy, does he like to read. I mean,
a lot of books.
that's
Yeah,
a lot, and I never finished booking them out. To be completely honest with you, I never was able to get enough books because I was like kind of like what you're talking about by investing in him, which is solely really clan boss, and I wasn't experienced enough to focus on faction wars. Um, that it hurt my account in other areas because he wasn't
yeah.
bringing what I needed to beat. Because I think this, yeah, single hitter, right? Wasn't bringing what I needed to beat other bosses in the game, and just other areas in general. So, um, you know, that I agree with what you're saying, and it's a frustration for me often when I maybe not frustration, that might not be the right word, but when I do takeovers and I see um the things that people are trying to do in clan boss sometimes. One of the first things I do, I just say, why this? Like you know, like open-ended questions, so I don't want to lead them in one way to answer or another. I'm like, where did you come up with this idea? And
Right.
then, you know, try to say, well, have you tried this, or perhaps try, you know, this different approach. And something I get all the time, hey, I have a 3-key Ultra Nightmare and a 1-key Nightmare. Um, can you fix my team? Can you get me a 1-key Ultra Nightmare? And it's like, I think you're fine. I mean, it's a little annoying to perhaps have to run those 3 keys every day, but you're getting max chest on the two most important stages of Clan Boss.
Right.
I would go get some gear. And then
Yeah.
with the right gear and blessings in different areas of improving in different areas of the game, that team will go from a 3-key to a 2-key down to a 1-key most likely, you know, with a little bit of work and maybe some retooling and some um what's the word? Speed tuning. That's the one that I'm looking
Sure.
for, you
Yeah.
know? And so I agree. I think people, I do think it should be a focus, but when you get stuck, move on to the next thing and figure out how to unstuck yourself.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think there's a very common and very natural progression of events that happens in raid for most players, whether they're, you know, free to play or low spenders. And whales can buy themselves around this or past this problem. But what happens is you get a good champion and you're excited for that champion. And so you start to build that champion and invest in that champion. And then you don't have the resources to complete that build, and then that champion doesn't do what you expected them to do. You watched all these content creator videos on how, you know, Harima is going to transform your arena, you know, team plus your Hydra team, and you put her in both places and she doesn't do it. And the
Yeah.
reason is, well, you only have half of the legendary tomes on her. You don't really have great gear. You're not optimizing this champion. She can do what you want her to do, but you give up on her because you're just, like you said, demoralized that it didn't really work. And then there's always another shard pull event in a couple of weeks, and you pull another champion, and you're like, oh, well, now instead of Harima, you know, I'm focused on, I just pulled Sulfurion, and he's a void legendary, and he's even
Yeah.
better, and so I'm going to put all my books into him. But you just used all of them on Harima, so you've only got 3 books for Sulfurion, and now you've got 2 great champions who are both built totally poorly, and they're not
Yeah.
doing what you expect them to do. And so I think the goal for a free to play or low spender should always be, when you invest, try to invest as intelligently as you can. Like, for, you
Yeah.
know, make your best judgment, and then push that champion to the utmost in terms of performance. The best gear, the most complete build in the best team comp, in the best, you know, in-game situations that you can, so that you're at least getting reliable value out of this investment. And even if you use them, you know, in just that one place for the next year, they're paying off, you know, the investment that you put into them.
Hmm.
Um, so what I see all the time when I do takeovers is People have crazy good rosters, and 3/4 of their champions are only half built. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, that's why you're struggling. It's not that you don't have the champions, and it's not even that you don't have the gear. It's that you've put 3 books in this legendary and 4 books in that legendary
Yep.
and 5 books in this epic. And, it's like concentrate your effort on a smaller roster and love the champions that you have invested in a little bit more.
Hmm.
And chances are you're going to do better in the long run that way.
One rule of thumb I have that's right in line with what you say is one champion at a time. That's my own personal rule across all of my accounts, regardless, free to
Yeah.
play, paid, whatever. My focus is one champion at a time. Now it is I'm a little more experienced and I am open to pivoting, like if I'm focusing on building up a tier 3, or lower, maybe a C tier champion or something that is niche, and then I pull like a Siffy or something. It's like, okay,
Sure.
well, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's we have to shift, or
Right.
or a mythical or something along those lines, right? But um yeah, and so much so that I kind of have burned myself a little. So I have Ugo up here on the screen, and I started
Just a quick
booking.
question. Do you see Ugo showing up right over my shoulder?
I do, yes.
Okay, she's poking
There we
out.
go.
I was like, I don't know if that was me or you,
I
but
don't
okay.
know how that happened. That's really weird, but I have fixed it on my. I moved you over a little bit, so we're good.
Okay. Okay, good.
But I did book Ugo early, so I beat hard and brutal. That was a priority for me early on because I wanted to pull those sacreds during a 2x. And the fact that we had the 10% for a really good champion was nice as well, right? So I did that push, and I did that push with Ugo and Kale, and I did put some books on Ugo, but I kind of regretted it because I really feel like books would better serve me on Tagore to get this down to a 3-turn cooldown.
Yeah.
And I said in a recent video that I'm gonna continue with Ugo while I could put, if I get lucky and get this cooldown, great. He doesn't take that many books, so there is hope. But I don't want to end up with a half done Ugo and a half done Tagore. And I would rather do one champion at a time.
Yeah.
I'll get Ugo off the screen so it stops popping up behind your shoulder. But yeah, that is. I have the same mindset. And I tell this when I do takeovers. I tell this to people in my clan. That's a big thing for me is one champion at a time. I think is the best approach to this game for most players, especially ones that have a limited resource pool. So
Yeah, yeah, and I agree. And this situation with Ugo that you were talking about and Tagore, and it's like Tagore, I think only takes 10 books, and I think Ugo takes something like 15. And that's
mhm,
another consideration sometimes in terms of deciding who to invest in. And I do feel that like now that you've invested in Ugo, you probably want to max her out. And that means
yeah,
Tagore is going to have to wait a little bit, and that's going to influence how you solve problems down the road. But I agree, the one champion at a time approach is usually the most effective. I will say there are, maybe two little exceptions to that. You already mentioned the first, which is like if you pull a champion that's just clearly going to give you more progress in more areas and you want to shift gears to that new champion, that's fine. But then that has to be your one champion
yeah,
and you have to complete that champion. The second maybe exception is that it is possible, even on a free to play account, to have a focus of one legendary, one epic, and one rare at a time, or maybe even one uncommon at a time. So it's like I often have enough books to book an epic champion just instantly. And so I could pull a good epic and book them even while I'm investing in a legendary. And
yep,
sometimes that makes it more efficient in Minotaur because now I can actually level up 2 or 3 champions in Minotaur and get
hmm,
them at the same time. So that can happen, but I don't invest in 2 legendaries at the same time. I never do that. I'm
no,
always
yeah,
focused one legendary at a time, and I rarely invest in 2 epics at a time unless there's a very specific reason to do it. And I always complete my builds. Right? I always complete my builds,
yep,
even if I have to go back to a champion because I've swapped, to a better champion, and then I go back to the last one because I really, really hate seeing a legendary champion with half books unless I have booked them specifically just for one skill and I got the one I needed. Like that's fine. But you
absolutely.
don't want yeah, you don't want to see a powerhouse half built. That's just a waste of resources and a champion.
Yeah, if I get really lucky and these two get completely booked out, I don't think I book this all the way
Of
up.
course.
It's only
Yeah. Don't.
damage. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's
There's
that's
no point.
a great strategy, and I use that on especially my free to play account, my main free to play account. Sometimes on the main account for CVC points, it's like okay, just so these
Right.
legendary books, but
Yeah.
you know, that's a paid account. So I also thought that this was funny. I don't know what level did you say that you were?
I'm 32 on my challenge account.
So I think it's 33 that we get access to Chimera, but boy, is that the wrong? That needs to be later.
The wrong time.
I went in
Yeah,
there,
that's
I
too
did
funny.
50,000 damage, and was like, no, okay, we're not there yet. But I thought that was a funny thing. Um,
Even at 40, when we get Doom Tower, it's still really hard
oh
at
yeah,
level 40. Yeah.
absolutely. So I kind of wanted your take on this.
Okay.
So this has been something that's plagued me, and thankfully the community has been supporting me, and I'm grateful to them. They've been very telling me that I'm not wrong per se for doing this. But so I have my own clan that I've been running. We talked about this briefly on your channel, but I've been running this clan since I started playing the game, and I've
Hmm.
built it up, and we happen to be tier 6 in Siege and are probably going to be hopefully tier 5 for the upcoming Clan v Clan. And there were some people that were complaining about certain advantages that gives me, and I wanted your kind of take on that. How do you feel about that?
Because you have your free to play account, your challenge account in this clan.
Correct. Yes.
Good for you. Like, great. My personal opinion is, as a free to play player, you need to look for every advantage that is out there, regardless of whether you're in this challenge or not. So if you can get free resources from a content creator who's got a giveaway, go get it. Do you know what I mean? If you can
Yeah.
get an advantage by getting into your friend's clan that's more advanced than you should really be in, fine, go do it. Like, and as far as the challenge is concerned, there were no rules against it. And
Yeah.
I think potentially, it's going to give you access in the store to, some things that other clans will have to unlock. And that's going
Mhm.
to be an advantage. So, yeah, absolutely do it. You would be silly not to do it. So I've got no problem with it.
Yeah, I bought immediately. I completed 3 clan quests and immediately bought 2 pieces of Killstroke. So they
There you
didn't,
go.
they didn't roll particularly great, but it is what it is, right? You get still got some 6-star pieces and put it to use. So yeah, that was my strategy all along, and there was a comment in my video and some discussion about it in the Discord, which is I was just curious about your opinion, but I feel good about it now. I feel everyone, all the comments have been really positive lately, and I was just curious about what your take, and I completely agree. Yeah, you got to do what you can to get an advantage. It's not like I'm in Sacred Pandas or anything.
Right.
It's a mid tier kind of average clan, and we're very kind of casual slash hardcore, and so I happen to have an opening in the clan, and I was like, well, hey, let's just not fill that, and I'll
Yeah.
pop
Yeah.
my head in there, get some clan gold, and then use the clan shop. So,
I
but
say this on my channel all the time, where as people need to game the way that makes sense to them, right? Like whatever you get, wherever you get your enjoyment, you need to go and do that. So for instance, like in a very different kind of game, there are some games where like people will use save game exploits to make sure they're always saving like every 10 minutes so they never lose any progress. And then there are other people who are like, no, you got to go like Iron Man and you get 1 life. And if you can't
yep,
win, then you're no good at the game. And it's like, that's a personal decision for you. Like if you want to put additional restrictions on how you game because that's where you get your enjoyment from, then you should do it. But to try to impose that mentality on somebody else's gaming, to me, is just wrong.
hmm
Like, so if you want to game in a particular, like, this is why I don't have a problem with spenders, right? If you want to play
yeah,
free to play, great. If you want to spend, great. If you want to play, rares only, awesome. If you want to play, like I'm going end game Kraken Arena, perfect. I literally, how you play this game is for you. It's not for me. So
yeah,
why should I care? When it comes to this challenge, The simple question is, what are the rules?
Yeah.
If you're taking advantage of everything that you can get in the game within the rule set, then you are above board as far as I'm concerned. And like I said, you would be silly if you're trying to win the challenge. You'd
Yeah.
be silly not to take advantage of something that's in the game that you're allowed to take advantage of just because somebody else doesn't like it. Like, who
Yeah.
cares? Just, you can go play your way, I'll play my way, and let's both agree to have fun in our game our own way, and so yeah, I think good for you.
And I wanted to say I love whales, because if not for whales, we may not even have a game to play, right? I think that's something that,
Exactly.
because while I am a spender on a low spend account, but free to play is what I really like doing a lot more. I mean, you've seen it. We've been talking both on and off camera. I get giddy when I start talking about my free to play account, my main one.
Yeah.
So, I do like that. I do enjoy that. I think this challenge is awesome, and I'm having such a blast with it. And yeah, it gave me a little bit of pause, but I'm on it, and I'm excited about it. I think because, I mean, if my clan can pull it off, and I hope that we do, but in a week's time from tomorrow, or well, a week and a couple days from tomorrow, I might have 6-star mythical feral gear on my account. Like that would be amazing, to a great start. And the other thing I wanted to say,
Don't discount
too,
the value. I'm sorry. Don't discount the value of a few blood shield rings. That could be incredibly valuable too.
absolutely, if they land on the
Yeah.
right champions, absolutely.
They land on the
And
right champions. Yeah.
the other thing too is, like, you're trying to find fairness in an unfair game. I mean, like,
Mhm.
are you really gonna say, like, who's to say? I should say it that way. Who's to say that the mythical feral gear is more or less better than someone that pulls Harima on their first shard, or a Yumiko on their first shard? Like, it's an unfair game. At the end of the day, I could pull 0 legendaries and no one's gonna care what clan I was in at the end of this thing if I never get a legendary. And so there's a lot of
There's that,
different.
but I'll actually say I think your approach is more. If you were going to say, like, who's to say what's fair? If you join a clan and your clan competes and earns you a reward, that's part of how you play the game. The RNG of just getting Harima on your first shard, that's luck. That's not strategy, right? That's just you. It's like going all in on the first hand of a poker tournament and just being like,
Mhm.
well, let's see what happens. You know what I mean? Like it for somebody, it's going to pay off, but that's not the behavior you want free to play players to model, because it's not going to pay off for the community, right? It's a bad way to approach free to play for the community, but it's never a bad approach to get in the best clan that you can that's super active and they can win CVCs and sieges, right?
Yeah.
That's smart gameplay, and you have to contribute to that team, or the team has to be really good in order to carry you, which maybe they are. But the point is, like, you're leveraging in-game intelligence, right? In-game knowledge in order to get an advantage. You're not just getting lucky. There's a
Okay.
huge difference. And so that, yeah, I think that is more fair than, good if you pull a shard and you hit. Like, I want
Yeah.
people to hit on champions, but winning because you just happen to pull crazy champions is not really an exhibition of skill.
Okay. I see where you're coming from with that. I can see that. Yeah. Um Slightly lost my train of thought there, because I was
Sorry.
gonna
Totally distracted you.
Yeah, well, I think that this has been pretty good. Oh, I remember what I want to say now. Sorry.
Okay, do
So
it.
I did want to say real quickly that will be the last time I talk about that, guys. I made the video. Your comments gave me all the support that I needed, but I did want Colred's take on it. I'm glad I asked, because he made me feel even better about it. So, because I don't want to get too into the drama or anything on my channel, but I just wanted to see what your thoughts were, and I really liked your answer. I thought that was a really good one. Yeah, I think we kind of touched on everything, right? We talked about your starter champion. We talked about what promo code you used, and what you would have used. Do you have any particular tips or anything that maybe we haven't covered here for me or for the viewers that are participating in this challenge?
Yeah, I think first of all, the first week you have access to your starter champion's faction crypt for the duration of the week, and I think that should always be a focus to get the maximum resources you can out of that faction crypt every single day for the first week. Once you get out of the first week, one trick that I like to use that I've taught on my channel, I know other people use it, is that plan your chicken farming, like if you're leveling up chickens based on the rotation of faction crypts. So for instance, if you see that in 2 days time the high elves is going to open, start leveling up some high elves chickens, get them to, level 30 or whatever. And so even if you don't have a normal like rare or epic in the high elves faction, even just 3-star chickens will be able to maybe farm you that first 2 or 3 levels of faction crypts. Those resources help you in the forge. You can get some good 3 and 4-star gear on some champions, and you'd be surprised at how that snowballs. It's just good to have that approach. Faction crypts are incredibly valuable. Perception gear is the best early game set and probably late game set in the game that you can just farm in this manner. And so I think it's a great place to focus. But other than that, I think we covered a lot. And there's too much to cover in any one given
Yeah.
video. But the other piece of advice I would say is just pay attention to what people are doing. Go watch the content creators who are in the challenge. They're all going to have different approaches, and then steal whatever you like from their
Yeah.
videos to use on your own accounts. Yeah,
That's what I did. I watched your
exactly.
video that you did with the winner last year, and I was like, well, okay, taking notes. Let me go ahead and implement some of that. Well, I didn't like that one, but I liked this one. I'll use that.
Right,
So,
exactly.
yeah. And I think most of all, have fun. I'm having a
Mhm.
blast with this. Seems like you are as well. I always look for a great excuse to start new free-to-play accounts. But we're going to go ahead and call this a video. So I just want to say real quick, thanks again to you, Colred, for joining me today. This has been a lot of fun on both videos. Please, if you guys haven't already, and I don't know why you haven't, go check out Colred's channel and check out the collab we did over there as well. Do you have any parting words for the viewers at home?
Well, parting words for you, Roadblock. Thanks for reaching out and suggesting this collaboration. I had a lot of fun. I will always talk free to play with anybody for as long as possible. It's something I'm passionate about, but I've really enjoyed this collaboration. So, we'll have to do it again in the near future. And to your viewers, thanks so much for letting me be part of your community today.
All right, guys, we will call that a video then. Thank you all for watching. Again, I am making a push to 5,000 subscribers right now. So if you enjoyed this content, if you're new here and you have not yet subscribed, please consider clicking that button for me. It will really help me out and help me reach that goal. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.